This is the final word story time, 237. Adam Collins and Geoff Lemon with you today for Maurice Blackburn Lawyers, Australia's #1 plaintiff law firm. We've got some really good stuff to get into today. I'm dressed and ready to go to a grand final later today as well. We might turn to that in a sec, a grand final of sorts. Geoff, in Lisbon, how do you read me?
I read you loud and clear. A grand final fever overtaking your house. What league, what comp are we talking? What's this all about?
We set up a mid-season T20 comp, and then for various reasons we had to delay the final till the 29th of August. So, it's a bit, you can't really start at 5:30 now. So it's a game that begins at 4:00, which means availability is a bit trickier for all involved. But we've gotten there in the end. We've got our team up and we're ready to roll, and it's a lovely thing to, be playing for something when you're in a friendly team, even if it is a trophy that I think Sheehan's buying at the moment for the team that wins tonight. And our colleague and friend Nick Tuvi's making a comeback playing for Southgate, who are our opposition tonight. They were one short earlier in the week, and Tuvs and I did that that coaching course, that overplays it. I was doing some bowling with Connor Haddo the other week. Tuvs came down to take a few photos and whatnot, bowled himself. He played for the Australian last man stands team many years ago. And he set a Guinness World Record for playing cricket at the highest point in the world or something that stood for a little while at Mount Everest. So he's got credentials. So the fourth member of our final word team, including yourself and Anakshi, of course, to be playing the game as an active participant, which we absolutely support. And who knows, maybe they'll win the flag and they'll knock us off and they'll be the one celebrating later on tonight.
Well, yeah, he's finally back. There's been this sort of obscure, like cinematic sort of reluctance where he won't give any details, but he just goes, I don't play anymore. It's like somebody was killed in a tragic cricketing accident when, I don't know, he smoked a straight drive back down the nets and into a passing bus or something like that. And he goes, I just don't talk. I just don't want to talk about it. So we've got him back. Whatever it is, this is the third act where he's going to get. This is Gordon Bombay getting back on the ice. Not in that sense, but we'll see.
Keep it in the family, sort of. Maybe, who knows? So we'll get through this show. Then I'll shift gears. I'm already kind of half dressed for it. I'm in the one day top and the jumper, and then I'll run straight out the door. 237. I didn't take a note of where this fits in. Although I am doing a cap number that's not far from that very soon, actually. But have you got anything for me?
237 is what Pakistan got bowled out for at the MCG a couple of years ago when they should have won. So that's what stayed with me, because if you remember, they have Australia 4 for bugger all. They dropped Mitchell Marsh in the slips, should have been 5 for 30-ish. Australia get the lead out to 317, and then even then Pakistan should have won it because they're 5 for 219. They've got Rizwan and Salman Agha there. They've got 98 to win. They're going along okay, and then Cummins and Mitchell Starc just tore them up. The bottom 4 were all dismissed for naught, and they were out in about 5 minutes, and lost by plenty in the end. But yeah, that one. There were 2 tests particularly that Pakistan let get away that summer, and that was the first of them.
It was a great test match. We often talk about how infrequently a great test comes along. This had lots of different twists and turns and subplots and stories within stories with individual players and a couple of Australian collapses, and then Captain Cummins with 5 in both innings. So I remember that very fondly. Thank you, Geoff, for starting us off there. I've got some anniversary bits and bobs before we get into our answers. Yesterday was 50 years since the Robin Hobbs 44-ball 100 that we told the story of and really loved up on a couple of years ago. So 50 years since Robin Hobbs in a tour game for Essex beat up the Australians, remembering that Hobbs wasn't really a batter, and it went on to be the second quickest first-class 100 ever in the UK. It's now, there's a picture of Robin Hobbs in our commentary box at the Oval. We all had to pick our favourite ever county player as a commentary team, and I picked Hobbs, who passed away a couple of years ago as well. So thanks to Damien Sharry for reminding me of that, having been contributing to us telling that story in the first place. And also today is I saw on social media, the anniversary of the famous Ashes test, the first of them all in 1882 at the Oval. So we're into Ashes fever. So that's the type of thing that ordinarily would pass without mention, but it's around the corner again.
It is. It's coming up 29th of August, all the rest of it. And there was the story about the Australian Museum picking up Bradman's baggy green, one of them. There's about 40 Bradman baggy greens going around out there. How many series did he play? It's funny when you look at his record because he didn't even play that many series. It's like 15 or something. it looks like a short career when you look at it that way, and 52 tests would be a medium-sized career these days. But you get a special cap from England when you brought up your 50th with some special tea-towel decorations on it. But I don't know. Does it matter? Do the Australian caps thing? I do find a bit weird. I find it a bit kind of American flag caressing to some degree, but then I also understand it to some degree as well. I'm always conflicted.
Yeah, I think these matter. There are 11 Bradman baggy greens in existence that we know of. Remembering that they used to give them out with each series, as you say. So there's 11 left. I don't know whether there might only be in total, as you say, 20 or something like that. So they've bought it.
Sometimes get backup ones as well, or they lose one mid-tour and replace it and so on. So there tends to be a more than, if your series played number is X, your baggy green number is X plus whatever.
Yeah, and this was the one that was given to Ron Saggers at the end of the 46-47 tour. So this was a really important Bradman series, because after the war, it wasn't certain that Bradman would continue playing Test cricket. As was discussed only a couple of weeks ago, Bradman at the time felt like he was doing something of a duty to the country, coming out and playing again. Again, it's no sure thing, but that 46-47 Ashes, and of course going on to play against England in 1948 and India between times, and kind of put a nice, beautiful full stop on an extraordinary career, of course, the most extraordinary career. But yeah, I actually think that many people will say this is a terrible use of government funds. So the National Museum of Australia have found a grant for this. But, don't you think this will get people through the doors? If anything's going to get people visiting the National Museum of Australia, and I know it's not a run-to-profit organisation to begin with, you're going for free and so on, but, if the whole purpose of a museum is to get people to visit, then having one of Bradman's baggy greens seems like a shrewd investment. This isn't like Blue Poles, you know what I mean? And I'm not even sure if Blue Poles was a bad investment, but it was certainly used as something to bash Whitlam over the head with. That's the only other thing I can think of in there that stands out and has had such coverage, albeit a long time ago now. But, I think there is some rationale to the government trying to buy up bits and bobs like this, which do, whether they should or shouldn't, neither here nor there. The Australian public do show considerable deference to baggy greens, not least Bradman's.
Well, Blue Poles generated more conversation than probably any art piece in Australian history, and it definitely got people through the doors, because people go and look at it.
They still do.
If they want to go and look at it and say, well, that's shit house, fine.
I remember it was the first thing I did when I went there in probably 2004 or something. You want to see Blue Poles because the historical baggage that comes with it. But this year, I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but if you're going to be spending money on buying back, it sounds like this is a grant to buy back cultural artifacts, then, this is a cultural artifact. Bradman's baggy green.
Yeah, if there are any spare bits of Farlap lying around that they haven't snapped up, they could snap them up. Whatever it takes to get people engaged in a collection, right? A collection needs some hooks. It needs some things that are going to get people interested, and that might be because of controversy, or it might be because of, I don't know, a kind of cultural broadness that some people will be a bit sniffy about and say is that's a bit déclassé, that's a bit too common. Well, that's very condescending as well. Why shouldn't things with broad cultural appeal also be on display?
And look, I can hardly judge in the first instance, given what I did buying back a fucking Batmobile a couple of years ago. So, it's all in context. And it wasn't only the government that chipped in here. So there are people or persons, I don't know if it's one or more, who have contributed to the other parts of this, which they'll be able to, tell stories of how they picked it up in probably the same way that mates of mine do and I do about the Angry Anderson Batmobile. It's a thing.
Why do we own one of Clary Grimmett's jumpers from 1930?
Exactly.
Well, because we can. Because we do. Anyway, let's do what we came to do. Let's get into story time via the medium of the game, Nerd Pledge. Nerd Pledge, the game we play with the nice people on the internet who fund this program. Bless them and bless all who sail in them. Is that possible? Bless whatever they sail in. They make this show possible. They make it possible for us to do a show every day of the Women's World Cup and a show every day of the Ashes and travel to the games. Get involved. They go to patreon.com/thefinalword. That's the website that funds the show. They sign up, they subscribe, they put their details in, and they choose a number of the currency that they want to give us. And it's not just your standard $2 or $5 or $10. They pick something specific because that number relates to cricket. and we have to figure out what the number means. Geoff White, no Melbourne ruckman jokes from me. Max Gawn just got his 8th All-Australian, but, it feels like a vibe at the time. Geoff White sent in £2.50. So this is a UK pledge. Geoff says, just wanted to mention that while $2.50 might appear to be a Julio pledge, it is in fact a proper nerd pledge. It refers to a player who is a dusty old bastard, but in my mind, in number only. If you've already covered him, no worries. Thanks for your continued excellent coverage of this wonderful game. It is our pleasure. From one Geoff to another. 250 DOB, date of birth, dusty old bastard, however you want to interpret it. What have you drawn from the distant swamp fires of history, Adam?
Yes, so Geoff with a J, hello to you. And I was going to also talk about former Fremantle and Melbourne ruckman Geoff White, so I'm glad you've covered that off.
Irresistible. Irresistible.
I thought I should just decode what DOB means for relatively new listeners. So this is a cap number of a player who, for whatever reason, has been kind of lost to history. Oftentimes in that weird interwar period, players would turn out for 1 or 2 test matches for England and they'd be lost to the game, or rather they just didn't do much else. And it actually started with Father Marriott. That was the very first DOB, and I suspect Father Marriott might get mentioned quite a bit on our show over the next few months. Max Bonnell's written another book, which I'm looking forward to reading properly. And I know there's an answer in our queue at the moment which relates to Father Marriott. So, that's where it all began, probably, 4-5 years ago on Storytime. Mm-hmm. But most of them we've done. But there is a little bit of a criteria. They need to be a player who didn't really make a mark or leave a mark. And this is where, as said by Geoff in his clue, this guy doesn't really qualify as far as the contribution that he made to the game, and that's absolutely true. The 250th cap for England in men's test cricket was a chap by the name of Maurice Turnbull, and he did an extraordinary amount. Maurice Joseph Lawson Turnbull, who played his first test
middle
match.
Initials.
Indeed.
Like that.
Played his first test match in 1930. But, yeah, one of the great all-rounders in life, and one of the great Welshmen of that era as well. And sadly, there's a through line here to another answer of mine just a couple of weeks ago on Storytime 235, which we'll come to towards the end of it. But, yeah, strong name, born in 1906 in Cardiff. And, boy, did he fit a lot into those first 33 non-war years of his life. From a big sporting family, his dad, Philip, played hockey for Wales and won bronze at the 1908 Olympics, which were held in London for Team GB in hockey. Big rugby family. They all played at Cardiff. Maurice did too. And then there's...
the team was coached by Gordon Bombay.
Yes, a quarter of an inch the other way and he would have missed altogether. We've done that on the show before. There's some crowd service. But yeah, cricket, hockey, squash. He did the lot, our man Maurice. And that's part of the reason why he went to Cambridge, just to play all the sports, to get blues everywhere. He got one in rugby and he got one in cricket, sure enough. And as early as 1924, when he's 18 years old, he's doing the back and forth with Glamorgan and Cambridge. He's playing cricket for Cambridge in term and cricket for Glamorgan in those summer months at the end of term when Cambridge finished their fixtures. So he's clearly got game. He becomes the captain of Cambridge University in 1929 and the Glamorgan captain the next year. So, once he was finished at the university, Glamorgan immediately go, this guy is going to be our standard bearer. And he is a proper leader in many ways. There's many obituaries that talk about him being an endlessly selfless player, enterprising, scored quickly, would try and keep the game moving. So perhaps ahead of his time on all of those fronts. Quick pivot back to rugby for a moment. He won a blue at university as a scrum half, played for Glamorgan, and then into his international cricket career, which we'll come to in a sec. He's picked to play for Wales in rugby as well in 1933. So in the home nations against England, he plays at Twickenham, one of 2 games of rugby he plays in that scrum half position for his country. And they beat England at Twickenham on his international debut. That's pretty cool as a non-cricket mention here of Turnbull early on. And lower profile, he's a gun squash player, represents Wales. He's a national champion in that as well. Played hockey for Wales like his old man did. So you're getting a sense of a guy who, I don't know, Geoff,
could do whatever.
Of the time, would it be reasonable to say that the 30s of the time, there's so much uncertainty in the world that you just throw yourself at everything. And it strikes me like he's that disposition. Anything going, he will do. And he was a brilliant after dinner speaker. He was a captain of everything he played in. He's just a guy who wanted take life by the horns, if you like, and did a fine job of that on the sporting field.
I suppose there's something in that kind of wealthy amateur sportsman area where you've got the scope, you've got the ability, you've got the free time, you've got the leisure to dedicate yourself to these things, you've got the access to the facilities, you've got the invitations, the squash tournament's on, someone's asking you to come down and play.
Exactly.
The hockey team's open for recruitment. Okay, pop down and have a go at that. And so you do get these people who are obviously very talented athletes, but they've got so much possibility which other people don't have because they've got to go down the coal mine and earn their money or whatever it is. So it's interesting that people live lives where they had that much possibility, that much opportunity to do things, but that there were people who took those opportunities rather than sitting around in a room drinking champagne and talking to their rich friends. They actually went and did stuff.
Yep.
Which there's something to admire in that.
Yeah, it's an important part of the story too. I mean, he was an amateur, as you touch on there, so he had that fundamental wealth to do these things, but he did them bloody well. So to the cricket bit of his story, his first class 100 is in 1926 for Glamorgan, then he gets 3 for Cambridge in 1929. Right. So he sort of bridges that time quite well at the end of his student life. Indeed, it's such a good season in 1929 for Cambridge and a bit for Glamorgan that he gets picked to go on that unusual tour of Australia in 1929-30. Remembering, I've done a story on this before where MCC sent a touring party to play against all the states. Remember, they'd been to Australia for Test cricket in 28-29, a Chapman side that famously won 4-1. But in 1929-30, this was a first-class tour where they tacked the Test matches on in New Zealand afterwards, the inaugural Test matches that New Zealand played. So they were there for Test cricket, but they were also there for a bit of a quasi trip of Australia, not an Ashes tour. It'd be great to have those these days. Anyway, thus he plays in New Zealand's inaugural Test match at Christchurch in January 1930. So his Test debut, Turnbull's, is the first Test match for New Zealand, and he made sure of it by getting a century in Australia. One that I thought I'd have a quick look at. I'm glad I did. Playing against New South Wales, they make 629 for 8 declared. Ouch. Bradman, 157, naturally. MCC, in reply, do commendably, making 469. Frank Woolley, who you spoke of last week, made 219. And then the aforementioned Maurice Turnbull made 100 batting with him. But how was he out? Caught and bowled Bradman. He was Bradman's one caught and bowled in first-class cricket. Bradman's 6th first-class victim out of 36 all up. I mean, famously, he gets hammered in that bodyline test at Adelaide that we've spoken about various times in the past. But it's probably an answer in Bradman's bowling more generally to explore it at some point. But yeah, a caught and bowled here. There's
the bit from the Canadian tour where there's a team that they play in Vancouver where Bradman's gone for, they're bowling 8 ball overs, but he's gone for something like 40 off 3 overs, and then he proceeds to take 6 wickets in his 4th over. I think including a hat trick. So, truly, truly bizarre. So he ends up with 6 for 40 or whatever it is off 4, and then barely bowls again on the tour. He occasionally is prevailed upon because he's not captaining those games, but he's occasionally, because he's relatively young when they do the US-Canada tour. But yeah, from time to time he rolls the arm over and does and continues to take wickets whenever he does, basically.
Yeah, and look, I would go as far to say he is handy until 1933. So I think if I remember looking at the chart earlier today, 31 of the 36 come before the end of 1933. Then there's one in 1938, I think, and a couple in 1948 in his final first-class game. That was the Hassett-Bradman game, I'm pretty sure, where they go back to Australia and do something of a testimonial. So that's the end of the Bradman bowling piece as far as we're going to deal with it today.
Why are they all leg spinners? Why are all the Australian great batters? Why, Ian Chappell, fold leg spin, Steve Smith, obviously, Bradman. Why does everyone try the most difficult thing?
True. Temperamental. I guess it's tradition.
Everyone in our generation, like everyone between 30, any Australian between 35 and 52 probably, tries to bowl leg spin if they don't bowl as their primary pursuit. But
I say it all the time.
What's with the other generations?
Yeah, I must say it 20 times a year when playing games, when mucking around before warming up, bowling a couple of leg breaks to warm the shoulder up. I always say some version of everyone who's 41, which my age is now, and is from Australia, knows how to bowl a leg break. I mean, if you're not, you're kicked out of the country, rightly so. So back to that first Test match, Turnbull on debut only gets 7 in a low-scoring game. But just on that England thing, I mentioned a few times that he's Welsh. His Welsh identity is a really big part of his life throughout. And the way he interprets playing for England is that he's bringing a piece of Wales into that England dressing room. The best thing he can do is emphasise that. There's actually a book that's out and I've received yesterday, and I haven't opened it up properly yet, but it's a book about the brief window when they tried to make Wales a test nation. Can't wait to read it. Apparently there's like a 10-year window when this was a real thing. Back in the 1920s, might be around this time, actually. There might be some links through to Turnbull in the book.
Well, this is when, that's when Glamorgan's starting to come through as a county as well. So Glamorgan's not a first-class county until, what is it? It's during the 1920s, isn't it? Because when Frank Ryan rocks up, the spinner, the left-arm spinner who we've talked about, who goes and qualifies for Glamorgan, they don't have first-class status that point, which is 1921. 6 maybe?
Yeah, so 21's when they get first-class status. So in many respects, Turnbull's timing's terrific for getting to play for a Welsh first-class team. But, it gives a sense of, if Wales and cricket weren't, it wasn't clear what the relationship between the game, Wales, England was going to be ongoing, right? And this is where Turnbull fits into all of this.
Yes, and he's Frank Ryan's favourite captain. So Frank Ryan is a character who pops up, who has a chapter in the Storytime book that's coming out later in the year, and he's a very troubled and troublesome bowler, but he gets his best results come under Turnbull because he's always fighting with his captains, but Turnbull's the one who he gets along with. And
there's quite a bit to this, him as a leader too, which I'll return to in a sec. Just on the test side of this. So he doesn't get a game for England in the summer of 1930 when Bradman's there. But he does tour South Africa in 30-31. He made over 1,700 runs that year in 1930 for Glamorgan. So that's one of, between 1929, the first time he passed 1,000 runs, and the war, he only doesn't make 1,000 runs once in 1938. He's super consistent. They're not gigantic runs. I don't want to pretend that 1,000 runs was a measure of a great. It was the measure of a good season.
It was when a working-like season because you play 30-something games.
Well, you bat close to 40 times, right? And in this, sometimes more if you played other fixtures. But he only had an average in the 40s once, but it was always in the sort of mid-30s. So he's super consistent in a team that had no money, had no resources, and as captain of Glamorgan, like it would be commonplace for batting in that aggressive way that he would put on a couple of match-winning turns per year. So quoting Christopher Martin Jenkins, to Morris, batting was a gay adventure. He made runs when they were wanted and whose value could not always be assessed on figures. So, stylist, put the team first, had a crack, and occasionally it would come off. He got 61 in his second test match, which was ultimately his highest test score. That was at Johannesburg. He played all 5 tests in 30-31, played a couple more in 1933 at home against the West Indies, and he got 37 not out in what proved to be his final test innings against India in 1936. So a relatively short test career, remembering that he's playing rugby for Wales at around the same time. So he's packing a lot in. And then he went on to become an England selector right away in his early 30s. In 1937, having played for the test team the previous year, they make him a selector. So you can get a sense of how well regarded he is across the wider game. Just on Glamorgan and the leadership here, there's a great little anecdote. In 1932, they are skint. So skint that they're in £5,000 worth of debt, which was an existential crisis for them at the time.
That's when they sack everybody. So that's when they sack Frank Ryan. They sack all their professionals because they can't afford to keep them on, basically.
Right. Well, they had to pay back the debt before they could play the season. So Glamorgan's decision to pay back the debt was to put on dancers all over Wales, and they would basically sting the country, anyone who was able to come to a dance, and that money would go to paying them off. But Maurice Turnbull committed to going to every single one of them. And it was said that he danced for more minutes than he batted that year, and he cleared all the debts for the club. Because, as captain, he's club secretary as well, and he'd taken on the leadership. And, it shows again, he's very Welsh. It's all part of that broader mission. And he made them believe. So despite all of these structural...
the Welsh Fire should do that now. Because, they're absolute dog shit. So why it couldn't hurt if they get the dancers up and going. Why can't we arrange dancers across Wales to try to get some cash in the door for Welsh Fire?
Well, I guess my grandmother was born in, I should know this off the top of my head. I think she was born in 1922. A bit too young to have attended the dances. But, maybe my family members in North Wales went to these dances. I'll see if I can find out somehow. Anyway, so... in the end, he made Glamorgan believe they could be something more than they were. He made them believe they wouldn't just survive in county cricket, that they could thrive. So, when war stops play, he's made 16,000 first-class runs and 23 centuries, but it's more the aura he presented, which went on to be the enduring legacy. And look, he like others, indeed, like Verity, foreshadowing the war would come at some stage. He'd already enlisted in officer training. So when the war broke out, he was prepared to enlist fully, and he went into the Welsh Guards. He was 33 by this point, so he probably could have gotten out of it. Like if you're 33 and you're a high-profile sportsman, he probably could have gotten out of active service with a young family and whatnot, but that was never going to happen with a personality like his. You fast forward into the war. He, like Verity, served in Africa, part of that brutal campaign, and then off to France, where tragically his life was cut short. Normandy, August 1944, a fairly brutal place to be in human history. He got his company got detached. By this stage, he's a major. His company got detached and on a reconnaissance mission to work out where they were. A sniper got him, so he was dead at 38. And this was a huge blow to the nation of Wales. Clearly, his memory never faded in that era. So when Glamorgan went on to win the county championship 3 years after the war, 1948, their most famous victory ever, really still that reference point of Glamorgan winning the whole thing in 1948. Many said at the time it was the foundation that he laid and it was the belief that he gave. So a life cut short, no doubt. So much included in it. Energy, commitment, and a huge legacy to the game, not least in the county that he served with such distinction for over 15 years. Before passing away, just 38 years of age in 1944, Maurice Turnbull.
And really interesting to hear more about him. There's this interesting sort of, it's like the layers of pastry in a cake, where you spend time researching somebody's life, one player's life and career, and it crosses over with somebody else. So in such a meaningful way, and then you end up getting the finding out about the subsequent people, the other characters who in learning about the Frank Ryan story. That's really interesting to hear more about Maurice Turnbull, who figures heavily in it, but whose character isn't so discussed in so much depth as you did there.
I don't want to do crude segue here, but the show is brought to you by Maurice Blackburn Lawyers.
There you go.
May as well link
Sometimes
in before
you can't resist it.
You just got to do it.
If the segue's too good, you got to take it.
And we continue to tell you the stories of the work they do. For many, many hardworking Australians, for instance, one of their lawyers, Craig, who assisted a client who contracted a serious lung disease, which meant she had to rely on heavy medication, oxygen treatment, and eventually a lung transplant, and was unable to continue working as a senior manager. So, absolutely brutal stuff, this. Unfortunately, though, when she tried to claim insurance, the insurer pushed back. They alleged, it's like this string of shame, right? What the insurers have alleged in these cameos we've got here. They alleged that because she had attended a GP about a cough before taking out the policy, her condition was therefore pre-existing and she wouldn't be covered. So Maurice Blackburn and the client took on the insurer and resolved her dispute for over $650,000. And that compensation enabled her to seek the medical treatment she needed and alleviated the financial burden of being unable to work for the foreseeable future. So no win, no fee basis for much of this work. Learn more, Maurice Blackburn Super Insurance. And we say it all the time, and we mean it every time, at an organisation we're very proud to be in association with as our principal partner here on The Final Word in seasons 18, which we're in now, and 19, which comes up in the Aussie summer.
You can find out more about them if you pop the details into your internet search engine, and hopefully it returns you something that's not unintelligible AI weirdness and actually directs you to their website. They've got offices across Australia, so if you're in need of those services and if you want to talk to someone about no win, no fee representation, that's something they often offer depending on the case. So get in touch, and we will be back after the break.
This is The Final Word Story Time. It's edition number 237 of that. Quick reminder on the way through, I'm drinking my new brew strawberry lemonade from the Advantage range. I said the other day, they've got the Discovery Pack on the newbrew.com/TFW link that's in our show notes at the moment. That's the 10 sachet bundle, all in the Advantage, which is their hero product. The brands like Cherry Surge, or the flavors, Cherry Surge, Berry Fusion, Apple Pie High, great names. And my favorite here, strawberry lemonade.
Be like a cool Italian guy, Cherry Surge, Cherry, son of Cherry Surge, etc.
it would work. It's niche, but it works for me. If it works for me, it'll work for some people. That's $19.95 in the GBP in the sterling. So it's I think from memory, that's about half price compared to what it would otherwise cost. So a great way to have a crack at New Brew, see if you like it, and easy to therefore work out the one that you like best. More about New Brew all the way through the remainder of the England summer. Newbrew.com/TFW. And of course, that comes with that very, very healthy final word discount that you get for any of the products there on their final word page. Geoff.
That's it. We have a second number for the day. It comes in from Kal L. That's spelt Kal, and it's spelt L. A new pledger from I'm going to assume from the United States, because the currency is in USD, and very nice to welcome a new sign up to the show.
Great to have you, Kal. I reckon anyone called Kal L is an American. I'm just going to say it. The name is American to me. Hi, guys. This is Kal from the US. So he gives it away in the first line. Should have read that first. Absolutely love your content. I have a long commute to work, and the final word is one of my favorite podcasts to listen to. Anyway, I made a nerd pledge for $11.96 and wasn't sure how to provide the clue. So here it goes. No cap before, nor cap again, yet in the book I left a stain. A fleeting guest on regal stage, my craft belonged to an older age. I danced with wrists, not with might, my weapons, shadows, dip and flight. In numbers odd, my foes I claimed, not known to fame, yet still unnamed. From classroom halls I came and went, a borrowed spell, the time well spent. Who was I, with ghostly art, that tore a tale that stats still heart? You guys are amazing. Keep up the work. Thank you. Thank you so much to Kal. That's a very thoughtful clue. And I can already tell that accidentally we're going to return to something I mentioned about 10 minutes ago. Go for it, Geoff.
You are. Yeah, I suspect that you saw this number in the list. So behind the curtain, the way we do this, we have the numbers in the list so we can sort of scan them, and then we take them off separately to work on them. So I reckon you saw this and something in your brain pinged immediately.
Yeah.
1196. But the poem was well constructed.
Yes.
Actually worked. It was rhythmically sound. The meter was consistent. Kal, not everybody has that metrical gift, so well done. Isn't Kal L isn't that like the original name for Superman or his dad or something on their home planet? Isn't he? That's not
in my world, mate.
It's not mine either, but there's something. Somebody will be able to tell me. I'm sure it's like Kal L. I don't know if it's Superman or Super. What you call his dad? Super old man? Super's old man? I don't know. Anyway, Kal, 1196. It's going to be the match figures taken in a test match by Father Marriott, who is someone that we've spoken about on the show before. But the first Father Marriott clue, Adam, goes all the way back to story time number 5. Number 5. So that way back to the beginning.
Am I right in saying he was like, sounds like you've gone back and looked at it. And by the way, this book coming out about Father Marriott, I've read the first few pages. It's about his summers because he's got an unusual career. Only plays in the summer. I think that's going to be
that's what we're getting to.
Oh, you're going to get to there anyway. But was this the first? Because I only ever did when I did the 1196 clue. On story time number 5, right? That would have been because I found his figures and I looked at his cap number and we adorned him the first dusty old bastard because he only played the one test, et cetera, and had a weird career. We know a lot more about him now because he comes up all the bloody time with Scott Bowl and stuff. But is this the first DOB?
This was the first DOB. I don't know if it's the first time we used the phrase DOB, but it may have been. But you didn't answer on it because it was Ilya Andrews, who's been a great friend of the show,
Indeed.
Great pledger, one of the top group of nerd pledgers in terms of consistency, in terms of generosity of pledge, in terms of coming up with tales that span the cricket world. And this was one of those. And you came back to Father Marriott extensively during the 2021-22 Ashes when Scott Boland was, for a while, had exceeded his record for the best average by anyone to have taken 10 wickets or more. So 8.72 was the Father Marriott average for his 11 wickets that he took all in the one test match he played.
It worked really well because that test match where he hit 10, it must have been Sydney.
It was Sydney, yes.
It had to be Sydney. And the reason it was good was because from a commentary perspective, we didn't send the whole SEN team to Sydney because it was COVID, wasn't it? There would have been COVID reasons not to go.
Yes.
I went, you went, but not many went. So, but the other commentator with me was Mike Atherton. And Athers, who is also from, that part of England, and also was a young leg spinner. spoke lovingly on commentary about reading the Father Marriott book when learning about leg spin as a young lad. So, we were able to kind of combine, I guess, what I knew of his story from, researching it on the podcast to what Athers remembered from reading Marriott's own words when he was young, when learning about the game.
Yes, all of that came together really nicely in across that period of time. So, yes, he's someone you spoke about very early on, which would have been 2019. And then someone you spoke about a bunch more. I think there was another number that came in about him later on down the line as well. So the quick recap bit, if you listen to those previous answers, you know that he served in World War One, got gassed at the Somme, spent time convalescing, didn't get to start university at Cambridge until he was 24. And so he was not a religious man or a member of a religious order, but the nickname Father Marriott was just because he was older than the other students. So the other Cambridge lot called him Father for being so ancient at the age of 24. And it's only around then that he really starts playing cricket, Adam. He grows up in Ireland. He qualifies for Lancashire by birth, so he plays a little bit for Lancs, and he plays for Cambridge a bunch. But he eventually qualifies for Kent by virtue of residence because he's teaching at Dulwich College. He's the Master of Languages, I think, at Dulwich. And so he's in the residential zone. So he gets picked in the 12 for an Ashes test in 1921 but doesn't play. And he doesn't end up getting his test match until much later than that. But he's renowned as being a wonderful bowler. He's a leg spinner. The parts in the clue about guile and dip and flight, that's the kind of way that he's spoken about. He rips the ball, he turns it a long way, he gives it a lot of air. He's one of those exciting kind of leg spin bowlers. He takes his first-class career wickets at 20. But if you go back, I went back and listened to your Storytime 5 bit, your confusion is, why did he play so few first-class matches and why did it take him so long to get a test match? And it's because, fundamentally, that he's not playing for most of the year. He's only playing for some chunks of the year. So this was something, apparently Max Bonnell is writing a book about every fucking answer that we've ever done on Storytime, because it seems like every second time one comes up, there's Max is writing a book on that. How many books are you writing? Are you trying to Gideon Haig yourself, Max? Like, what are you...
Well, he keeps winning awards as well, so I expect he probably will. There's some really lovely stuff. He's a great interview as well. So, mate, I could see a world where we return to Father Marriott on book club at some stage.
Right. So I had done a bunch of research for the Storytime book because there's a Father Marriott chapter in that book. And after having done all of that, I come to this bit where, because I didn't realize that this book was coming out, where, Max's book is coming out, and the name rather gives away what I'd been digging around to find with this research, which was what was going on with Father Marriott's first-class career. So he doesn't play for 3 years after Cambridge when he's teaching, and then Lord Harris, the one of the faces behind the 1879 riot, who's much older at this point in the 1920s, badgers him until he agrees to turn out for Kent. Second game back, takes 10 for against Hampshire, the local rivals. Goes on like this. So he goes on a tour to South Africa but doesn't play a test. But aside from this, he only plays 10 or 11 games a season again and again and again. And the reason, once you apply a little bit of logic to it, is that's when the school holidays were on. He either couldn't get the time off work or he didn't want to get the time off work. And what really stood out is that when you go back through his record, for Kent, he never played. He did not play a single match for Kent in the month of April, didn't play a single match in May, and didn't play a single match in September through his entire career, which is a remarkable thing to achieve as a first-class bowler. So I was pretty pleased with myself for having worked this out. And then I find that Max's book is titled Father Marriott's Summer Holidays, and I'm like, for fuck's sake, Max, you've ruined the twist. So because that's how it works, right? He's playing during the summer holidays, which must be great for a leg spinner because there's no April day when your fingers are cold and you can't grip the ball, and there's none of those games where the seamers are doing most of the work and you bowl 4 overs and you spend most of the time down at fine leg. You know, you get surfaces in the summer when they've started to dry out and they're starting to take spin. What a life. What a wonderful life to come in as a leg spinner who played a bit in June, but almost entirely in July and August every year when the sun was more likely to be out, the pitches were more likely to be turning. And he got big turn when he bowled. So Kent got 463 wickets out of his summer holiday excursions. They were happy with it. Lord Harris died in 1932. So by this point, that's when Father Marriott's starting to kind of fade out of. He's not as enthused, I suppose. He's not playing as often, but he does get his Test match after Lord Harris's death. That's 1933, that summer when he gets called up against West Indies and takes the 11 wickets in the match there. So he's somebody who manages to make it work. He plays on his terms, and the club are content to let him do it, which is interesting in itself.
I think there are some similarities here. Well, differences obviously, but some similarities to the previous answer in that it's hard generally to judge people by the standards of the interwar period because so many people came back. In the case of Marriott, for all money should be dead. Like so many, 60,000 people were on the first day of that campaign, wasn't it, at the time? And to get out the other side of it.
60,000 British.
60,000 British, alone, sorry. Yeah, right, yeah. So I guess my point is if you get to the other end of that, you're going to make decisions that are endlessly informed by that. And if he had decided that returning to the classroom in that way was the most important thing to him, then that was going to be the most important thing to him. You can't really, imagine it in the way that we might now and say, there's these missed other opportunities. He's made decisions for his own reasons.
Yeah, and he must have wanted that. He must have enjoyed doing it that way and said, I'm happy to prioritise. Because they used to fantasize about it, didn't they? A lot of the correspondence from the trenches was about fantasizing about the boring lives they wish to lead. Running I just want to be back at home.
That's right.
Sitting in the garden drinking a cup of tea and
exactly
talking to my dog.
Yeah, exactly. Because they were leading such ridiculously eventful, on the wire lives. They were craving banality. And I'm not saying that this career path is banal, but more that it sounds less exciting than being a professional cricketer. It probably is, but that might just be fine for someone who'd been through what he'd been through.
But also someone who, I suppose, working in that profession, it would give you a sense of the future. It would give you a sense of renewal and possibility to be working with young people when you would have seen so many people of your own generation die around you. To be able to feel like humanity was moving into the future, that might have been a really nourishing, healing sort of thing. I don't know. Or maybe he just hated kids and liked being able to hit them with a cane. I don't know. It could have been either.
Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. We like the guy.
We can armchair psychologize all we want. So the other great twist with Charles Marriott, who's not a religious man who's called father, he takes 711 first-class wickets at just over 20, and he cannot bat for shit. He's dreadful with the bat. He makes 574 runs and averages 4.4. So he's on that relatively unpopulated list of more wickets than runs. There aren't that many players with a substantial career who have more wickets than runs. If you read through that list alphabetically, C.S. Marriott sits right next to C.S. Martin from New Zealand, and they were rather similar with their limited ability. This is my favourite bit of the whole story that I was able to dig out. So he batted 178 times over 18 seasons, Charles Marriott. And across that entire span, he never reached 20 with the bat until his last first-class match, which he played for Kent in 1937. So he's pretty old at this point, right?
Never reached 20.
He'd never crossed 20 in his entire first-class career.
That's almost harder to do than to, know what I mean? It's one of those where...
Right.
Yeah, anyway.
There's got to be a day where you nick 4 through the slips and then push a couple off the pads, shortly. It's got to, statistically, it's harder to not make 20 than to make 20. Or the other way around. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's this last game for Kent, right? They've conceded a big score. They're out of the game, essentially. So his team put him up to open the batting. Now, I don't know if this is a night watchman situation because it was towards the end of the day. Very late in the day, or if it was just like a farewell lark, we're fucked anyway, you might as well go up and open because it'll be fun. I wouldn't have thought you'd trust him as the night watchman if you wanted somebody to do that job legitimately, but it feels a bit like letting Claude Makelele take a penalty late in the season in 2005 or something at Chelsea. It's, last game, nothing to be lost, go up and open the batting. So he does. He opens the batting, which he's never done before in his career. He makes it to stumps. He comes back the next morning, and whether Sussex are just being generous and feeding him some bad bowling or whether he just swings the bat and it works, I don't know. But he makes 21, first time past 20 in his career. It's the second highest score for the team because when he's out, a massive collapse happens and they get bowled out for absolutely bugger all. And he's ended up with the second highest score. They're forced to follow on. And when they follow on, he's back at 11, where he should be, where he is appropriately and beautifully stumped for a duck, out for the 52nd and final duck of his career. The man who could bowl beautifully but could not bat to save his life, Charles Father Marriott.
Terrific. Thank you, Kal, for giving us a chance to revisit someone who has been linked to story time from the get-go. Next is me. I have Nikhil Venkatesh with me. He's been with us before, of course, Nikhil. Yeah. So thank you for being a consistent pledger, consistent supporter of the show. 229 USD. Geoff, you got a clue for me here?
Brief clue. I've changed my number, says Nikhil. It relates to Derbyshire. Once again, a classic match and a pioneering cricketer, 229.
Yep, this is the cracker. So meet Charles Olivier. And I'm pleased that I've had the chance to meet Charles Olivier through the research for this answer. I must admit, someone who was never on my radar, but was absolutely a pioneer. That's the word that's used in the clue there. In simple terms, he was the first black West Indian to play county cricket. Right. But there's quite a bit that gets him to that point, which I'll explain. So he's born in 1876 in St Vincent, grew up with the game. Suppose it's really a story of empire here, isn't it? As cricket becomes the biggest sport in that part of what was then known as the British West Indies in the late 19th century. And he grows to be, Charles, this is a tall man, and he learnt the game in the fields, and he learnt it, I suppose, in a more rustic way. But that served him well. He had a style about him that was a bit homespun, and it worked an absolute treat. And he made his name quite quickly as a stylist, as the kind of player who would bring people through the gates. So in 1900, when the West Indies were taking their first ever team to England, at the age of 24, he was on the boat on the way to England, and remembering that it's still 28 years before the Windies play their first test match against England, but they have a tour here where they play a whole bunch of games, 17 in total, across a couple of months in the middle of the summer of 1900. So that's MCC plus county fixtures. Only 12 of them have first-class status. And to begin, it's a bit on the ropey side. Like they lose a lot of their games early on.
Yeah, it's like when the US team's touring over there with Bart King and that sort of era, right?
That's it, same era. So it's captained by Plum Warner, who, of course, was born in and raised in Trinidad. His brother, Orcher, was the captain of the West Indian team. And as they got deeper into the tour, they realised that they needed to manage the games a little bit more, and the West Indian tourists did better and better. So they got more competitive as they went. Warner's brother, by the way, got malaria after 7 games in charge, and he had to pull out of the tour. There weren't many black men on the trip. One of them was Leary Constantine's dad, LeBron, who was a first-class player 56 times between 1892 and 1912. LeBron's how I'm choosing to pronounce it. It might be LeBron. Either way, Lebrun, Constantine or Constantine.
Not quite LeBron James.
No, not quite.
Slightly.
It does sort of sound that way.
Okay.
And he was the main batter. He was the main batter along with Charles Olivier. They were the two who were the most capable in that touring party.
It must have the same derivation though as a name. It must just be written down slightly differently. I wonder where the link is. I've never thought of doing the etymology of LeBron James.
No, well,
on the final word, but this might be the time to dig into it.
So, Charles is also the only player from St Vincent. Most of them are from what was known as British Guyana and other of the bigger islands. But no, it was significant that he was from St Vincent. And, Charles went on to top the averages comfortably. Averaged 33, 1 century and 350s, but 883 runs was the most runs by about 250 across all 17 fixtures. 600 of those runs were at first-class level. And through that, he earned this reputation as a thrilling player. I mean, it was the first time that crowds had seen a black player do this type of thing. So it was quite something. Like he looked the part. He was big. He was bold. His demeanour, as they say in the reports of it, he literally got people through the gates to watch him play. There was a fascination about this Charles Olivier fella. And the peak of this was against Leicestershire. Now, it was a non-first class game, sadly, so it doesn't count to his first class numbers, but he got 159 in a game the West Indian tourists won by an innings and 87 runs at Grace Road. So a bit of a turning point at the halfway mark of that tour where they won that game. And in it, he put on 200 at the top of the list with Plumwarner, who by this stage was playing for the West Indian team. So there's that nice through line to stories we've told in the past about Plumwarner and growing up
I didn't realise
in Trinidad.
He played for them as
yeah,
well.
Yeah, West Indian touring side.
Loved the game, Plumwarner.
Absolutely.
Mustn't have had much going on at home because he's always like, oh, you're going to Argentina? Yeah, absolutely. I'm in.
You've got it. When the game against Derbyshire comes around, Charles makes 3 and 23 not. That was later in that month of July. But it proves crucial because what Derbyshire had done through the series to that point, they basically scouted him. And when he got to Derbyshire, they said, don't go. Stay here. Continue to play for us and play in our championship team. So that's precisely what he did. When the tour ended, he stayed in England.
Very Derbyshire. Like, we need players.
Yeah,
please
get
stay.
along. So he stayed on and he did his residency requirements, is what you had to do at the time. So in 1901, he was permitted to play, but not in the county championship. So he played like the MCC game. He played the tour games. He played his first match actually for them against London County in their brief existence. And he made a half century on debut against W.G. Grace, who of course at that point was playing for London County. So he's away there. In 1902, he starts his championship career with Derbyshire. And it's not long before he's a permanent fixture. And then we move to 1904, which is where the highlight of his career comes, where he makes 1,268 runs in a full season, average of a most commendable 34, which in context is very strong. And it includes his defining moment as a cricketer. Now, this is a county championship game where they're playing against Essex at Queen's Park in Chesterfield, which is from time to time a place where Derbyshire still plays an outground. And in the clue here from Nikhil, he talks about one day. Well, the 229 and one classic match is what we're going to go to here. So they're playing, as I mentioned before, Essex, who have got a very strong team in their own right. Percy Perrin, out of 597 to start the match for Essex, 597 in a 3-day game, makes 334. I feel bad about brushing over that almost entirely, a triple hundred, but there you go. That lays the marker for the type of match we're going to have here. Johnny won't hit today, is playing as well. Of course, he goes on to become the England captain, and Charles knocks him over. He bowls him one of his rare first-class wickets. Well, not rare, but he doesn't bowl that often. Derbyshire, in reply, nearly reached parity. They get to 548, and Charles Olivier, at the top of the list, makes 229. Wisden described him as the dominating figure in a remarkable match, and that's what the match goes on to become. So after conceding that first innings deficit, albeit not much of one, 597 to 548, they roll Essex for 97 the second time around, leaving themselves 149 to get for a stunning come-from-behind victory, and they get it just one wicket down. And Charles Olivier, after his 229 the first time around, gets 92 not out in the second to somehow win that match, having conceded 597 the first time by 9 wickets. So it's not the highest turnaround in first-class history. That's when New South Wales made 900 odd and lost the game in 1920. But it's the most in the county championship to that point. Again, referring to Wisdom. In defeating Essex, Derbyshire accomplished the most phenomenal performance ever recorded in first-class cricket. Their achievement has no parallel in the history of the game. So, this is why this innings goes down in club folklore to this day. All the more remarkable that, it's a black West Indian cricketer, the first to ever play in the county championship, to record the first ever double hundred for Derbyshire. Remembering the race elements impossible to avoid here, you can only imagine what the sort of the racism that he must have encountered at different parts of his time playing professional cricket in that era.
Particularly sort of off-field, particularly around where the team's staying and travel on the road and all of those kind of things, where it must have been, something that they ran up against so often.
Totally, just the unknown in all of this as well. And he went on playing first-class cricket until 1907. He made over 3,500 runs before his eyes eventually went. He kept playing club cricket for decades, but he gave up the professional stuff. He stayed on working in England as an educator, stayed inside the game as well. He was one of the first ever coaches to go out to the Netherlands, to coach out in the Netherlands. So he's got a bit of history there in Dutch cricket. And, this is all before Constantine and Headley and Sobers and the West Indian greats that follow. Well, Charles Olivier was proof to that those generations that followed that they could make it in England and around the world. And he passed away in 1949 in his adopted part of the world in the north of England. But what a massive contribution. That 229 for Derbyshire, and also his first-class bowling average. I didn't bowl too often, but it was 22.89, so rounded up 22.9 as well. So it works on a couple of fronts there for Nikhil, and I'm really glad I had a chance to learn about this guy. He sounded like an absolute cracker in terms of what he was able to achieve across a number of different ways, starting his life in the fields of St Vincent and finishing off as such a prominent player on the county circuit after that tour in 1900.
Yeah, he's someone I was vaguely aware of. I knew the name and knew the one-line précis of the story, but probably not much more beyond that. But the groundwork laid by a player who took that challenge on is extraordinary. The LeBron bit, I was just poking around a little bit there. There is a history of the name in Black American culture going back a fair way, but I'm guessing it's probably coming from French, like le brun, like the brown, something like that. Probably not that exciting to begin with, but it might be from Spanish. There's a le brun is like something to do with being like a rabbit, like a hare, like a fast like a rabbit. This is a kind of descriptive name, so maybe that's what Constantine's dad was, quick between the wickets.
Geoff, you've got one more answer to get to. We'll do it after the break. Just a reminder that, how we do this, patreon.com/final word, right? This is our baby, right? We've been doing this for years. It's the way we fund the show. We'd love to grow that number all the way through. I don't know how many patrons we've got exactly at the moment, but that campaign we ran earlier this year where lots of people got on board, that was a really generous and kind thing. And this is the reason why we're able to make upwards of 250 eps a year, all the daily shows that are coming up, the investment that we're making to send people and have people overseas for us through the Women's World Cup and then into the Ashes summer and beyond as well, the T20 World Cup in the earlier part of next year, the Women's World Cup in England next year, so much going on in 2026. It's all, the foundation for it all is patrons. So if you've listened to the show for a short time or a long time, that Discord channel, it's a far better place to talk cricket than any of the social media platforms by a mile, with other well-informed cricket people who care a lot and who have the game's interest at heart like we do. So, that's hopefully something that we can encourage you to do and become part of everything that we're going to do on the channel and on Discord and on Patreon throughout the course of the Ashes summer.
Yeah, we managed to sneak past Murali's wicket tally of 800, where we are around about at the moment. The numbers dip a bit at the end of the month because people's credit cards expire and whatnot, and they have to sign up again. But we're there and thereabouts. I'd love to do what Shubman Gill couldn't do and catch Bradman, 974 runs in a series. That's the one for me. That's next.
Well, let's start the campaign.
That's a long way away.
Well, let's start the campaign here. 974. That was Bradman in an Ashes series. Let's try and reach Bradman by the start of the Ashes on the 20th of November. That gives us some run up. So don't wait. Get on board now and help us haul down the Don. Off to a break. We'll return in a moment for Geoff's final answer. This is Storytime 237. Adam Collins, Geoff Lemon. I'm not at the right part of my page. I'm going to pad for time for at least 5 more seconds.
That's
Tom
fine.
Riordan.
I can do that.
Tom Riordan is your final answer today, who's a new pledger as well. Welcome, Tom. Great to have you with us. The clue from Tom is as follows. G'day, gents. Love your work and the work of all in the Final Word orbit. Thank you for that. My debut nerd pledge is in honour of a match that provided 18-year-old me demonically hungover and lying in front of Fox Sports with unexpected entertainment and set a very high benchmark for best innings of the year. Reach out if any further nudges are required. This strikes me as the kind of thing, Geoff, where given we've got a date, given you've got a number, I don't think you would have needed to have gone back to Tom. I have faith in you and the Nerd Pledge crew. How'd you go?
Well, this was one I took away solo because I had some vibes about it. So I didn't have a date because I don't know when Tom was 18. Tom could have been 18 at any stage, but
right, okay.
I know that it needs to have been on Fox Sports. I know that the number is $3.60. So I know that it's not a score that anybody made because nobody could make 360. Aside from the odd first-class score or Vian Mulder type situation. So it's not that. Nobody's made. There's been no test 360. My first thought here was 360. I thought Mr. 360. They call me Mr. Bombastic. Like A.B. de Villiers, Mr. 360, that whole whole vibe. Hungover on the couch. I'm like, yeah, it could definitely be the 2015 World Cup, the SCG, when AB went berserk.
But didn't he? I'm sure you're coming to this. Wasn't there a New Year's Day batting in the pink uniform, broke the world record?
There was. That was from South Africa. So that was happening because they're
36 balls. That one.
31 balls for the century.
Oh, right.
And then,
fair enough.
And then he went on to 149 not in that innings, if memory serves correctly. But that game would have been on in the middle of the night in Australia. So Johannesburg is 8 hours, maybe 9 hours behind with when daylight savings applies in Australia, or it might be 8. I think it's 8 hours. 8 or 9. Anyway, so the afternoon in Joburg would have been I remember watching it actually.
Right.
I was also coming home from having been out fairly extensively, and I think it was about 4 a.m. something.
You know
like
what? I think it was Corey Anderson. I might be confusing because Corey Anderson hit the world record on New Year's Day, wasn't it? So
but AB was around then because it was while the West Indies were touring South Africa in January of 2015, if I recall correctly. So it could be that one, but I don't think he would have been hungover yet in the early hours of the morning.
So, and that was 36 balls. I'm just cross-referencing as we go. So 2014, New Year's Day, a 36-baller from Corey Anderson, which overtook, of course, Shahid Afridi, which stood as the record with 37 balls for
so long.
1996 or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was one of those.
Options galore. I'm looking forward to where the AB answer's going. Sorry to cut you off.
Okay. No, that's okay. It was it was up there with the 194 from Syed Anwar that stood as the ODI record score for so long. Now, so I thought it could be this West Indies game in the World Cup where AB makes 162 not from 66 balls. He's only one-day 100 in Australia, which is interesting. It also contains that spell that I raised with Jason Holder, possibly against my better judgment while interviewing him, where up until towards the end of that game, he's bowled 8 overs, 2 maidens, 1 for 40. Very nice figures, very tidy figures. He finishes with 1 for 104, goes for 64 off the last 2 overs that he bowls.
It was a cruel World Cup with that 4 outside the circle thing. I know Maxie spoke of that as well. It was really, you had to basically pick a side of the field to protect. There was no, because at the moment, of course, you can have 4 out at one side and have a sweep at the other side. You kind of manage it a little bit like it is in a T20, but you can't manage it with 4 outside the circle. Yeah,
or do your kind of in-out thing. You're 3 and 2. At least you've got a chance with the miss hit if it lobs up in the air. So maybe it could be that. That was, the other part that I thought here was the clue says it set a very high benchmark for best innings of the year, which makes me think that it's happened early in the year. I reckon it's like you see an innings in the first couple of months of the year and you go, well, that could be the best innings I see all year. That's just my vibe. I don't know if that bears.
I think it's bolstering the case for the Corey Anderson just quietly.
Yeah,
best innings of the year kind of implies the very start of the year.
36 balls.
Watching on Fox Sports, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That would have been on. And New Zealand time zone for a hungover Australian would be waking up on New Year's Day. Sorry to scupper your research.
Much better than anything. No, this is much better than anything that I've got because I got through this whole thing and I was like, I don't think I've solved it, but I found.
Don't worry about it. You do your interesting answer, and we can say to Tom that it may well be Corey, and it doesn't really matter. We'll do it another time.
Yeah, it may well be Victorian captain Corey Anderson. Remember, who was the Big V, proud wearer of the Big V in the Guyana Max 60 competition or whatever it was from a year ago that they now had to shut down because they didn't pay any of their players. Great stuff. The proud lineage for Corey, who also, if we can go off the track again, was so good in that McCullum 100 at Christchurch, which we all talk about the Brendan McCullum century of. What was it, 54 balls? But it's Anderson. Anderson's, I remember writing about it, describing him as the anchor in that partnership when they were going at 10.5 and over, and he was going at about 8 runs and over himself. He's a forgotten part of that. So, yeah, probably, Tom, it probably is Corey Anderson, but I'm not going to talk about Corey Anderson anymore, unless Adam, you want to look up something.
I'm okay. I'm relaxed about going with your answer. I've got a grand final to get to.
So I thought Australia games. I thought the 360. I want it. this is a hangover. It's in AUD. I want it to be a match that Australia are playing in, and 360 makes it very easy to narrow down. No Australian women's team has ever made 360 in any format. The Australian men's team, they made 360 in a test match once, which was Bodyline when Stan McCabe made the 187. So Tom was not watching that on Fox. The ODIs, the men's team have never made 360 either. But actually, when I read the clue, the thing that pinged in my head was 360 World Cup final 2003.
They said India 360.
Yeah, I've kind of forgotten that in a way that 360 was the target, not the score. But it's one of those. It's like the 434 versus 438 game that South Africans call 438. And when Australia were closing on that score the other night in Mackay, all of the Australian talk was about 434. 434 is the number that lodges in Australian heads. It was like, can they go past the 434, the famous 434?
Playing a game with a South African on Sunday, an ethical hacker, which I'd never heard that job title before, but a young lad called Simon who was mates with Brad, who you now know. And he came in and was very South African, very brash, and comes in and starts saying that he made Brad sit through the entirety of the 438 game. And I said, that's quite funny because it's a 434 game in Australia. And I was like, yeah. And then proceeded to tell me about every inch of Herschel Gibbs's knock that day, which I appreciate.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that no one made a double hundred in that game either. So, right. The 359 could be a 360 game if you think of it in that kind of way. So I did think about that as well. The timing of the World Cup final wouldn't really have worked. It would have started in the evening. It is possible if you have a really epic hangover that it will continue into the evening, but generally I'd assume that was during the day if you had that sort of situation. But it wouldn't have been on Fox, would it? It was on 9, I think.
No. Oh, yeah, final would have been, it's a fair point. 03 World Cup, the Australian games were on 9. Well, at least the finals were.
Definitely the Australian games were. I remember watching they were, most of it. And
it was back in, I'm not sure, is it still the case that the World Cup games are on anti-siphoning? It might be, actually. Aussie games.
They are, but it's not enforced, basically. I mean,
no. I think World Cup games are, though. I think World Cups might be simulcast on. It's something like that, you know what I mean? It's back then it was.
They are available, but not screened. I mean, it's even the ODIs and the T20s, the domestic games are, in theory, on the anti-siphoning list, but Channel 7 elect not to screen them under that's how their contract works.
Yeah, that was great work from the federal government at the time who just did not pay any attention to it and dogged it. Anyway.
They very deliberately did that. That was it was not an accident at all. They were quite happy to let the large wealthy. Well, it was Murdoch's lot who wanted that deal done. So there's no way that deal was getting challenged. So in theory, I think if you read the fine print, 7 have the right to screen them, and it's like a understanding that they won't choose to enact that right, and that's how the deal gets done. But that's my understanding of it, which may or may not be entirely spot on. I'm open to receiving a call from somebody to tell me about the details of the contract. I would be very interested to know the details of the contract. Right, 359 equaling 360. So here is the weird thing, Adam. Right, Australia make 359 in Joburg. They go on and make 359 again the next year in Sydney in the Tri-Series final to beat India. They make 359 in 2013 in Jaipur against India, and they make 359 in Mohali 2019. Those games you'll remember for various reasons.
The Mohali game was the Ashton Turner, Peter Hanscom, Usman Khawaja.
I'll come to that in a moment. But here's the weird bit, and this is where I got interested in this answer particularly. 359 4 times against one opponent feels very rare. Like that's a huge score, right? If you're looking at a team's most common score, it's got to be something in the middle of the bell curve, surely, right? How can 359 such an outlier? How could it repeat 4 times? So I thought, I wonder what Australia's most common ODI score is.
Well, that's fun.
Started looking through the list, and as you go down, you've got the 359, which is made 4 times against India and never against anybody else. Only 3 other teams ever have made 359. So Australia's made it 4 times against India, and 3 other teams all up have made it against anybody ever. This is already weird, right? This is.
Sorry, you've got me distracted by your previous question about what would be the most achieved score for Australia in a one day, because it would have changed over time, right? But I'm feeling like a 6 for 238 You know, it's been, like something like that.
Like between 220 and 240 would
proper
be
90 stuff. Yeah.
That's what you would assume, right? That's what you would think. So I count down all the way through the 300s. Most scores haven't even happened twice. A couple haven't happened twice. All the way down into the 200s, there's nothing that's recurring 4 times. You've got to go all the way back to 269 before you find a score that's been made 5 times. 242 has been made 4 times. And that is it. There is no other score. 359 is the second most commonly made score by Australia in one-day international cricket, only missing the top of the pile by 1. And it's all against a single opponent.
Huh.
It's truly bizarre in a statistical variance kind of.
Proper story time stuff. Something that doesn't happen for 100 years and happens twice in 5 minutes. This is our energy.
So, 269 5 times, 242 4 times, 359 4 times, and that's it. The 269, the most recent time that was achieved, was only 2 years ago. So until 2 years ago, 359 was the most achieved score by Australia in one-day cricket, equal with 2 other scores, which is bizarre in itself. So whether any of those games could have been the hangover game, they probably weren't because it was probably Corey Anderson. But possibly Sydney 2004 could have been, was an afternoon game. Australia batted first. Hayden made a run a ball 100, and Andrew Simons comes out and makes 66 from 39 balls, which was very unusual in that era. Strike rate of 170 in a one-day innings didn't tend to happen much. Hit 3 sixes along the way. India, similar team to the World Cup final. The Ghosts got them. They choked. They were nowhere near it. They were out for bugger all in that particular chase. Now, it probably wouldn't have been on Fox either, would it? When did Fox start simulcasting?
No. It's a fair way. It's in fact, it might even be the end of that TV deal that you referred to before. Like, it might even be. I've got a feeling that one day international cricket was all on terrestrial, all on Channel 9 rather, until the end of their TV deal in 2017.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if they simulcast, because they simulcast a lot of footy, but I don't know if they simulcast cricket as well.
I mean, they may have towards the end, but it doesn't jump out at me. I think we would remember, if they were doing.
They had all the overseas stuff, but they didn't have.
Yeah.
Right. So it can't have been that one. It could maybe have been 2013 in Jaipur. That's the crazy series where Mitch Johnson tunes up for the Ashes. Everyone makes huge scores aside from Johnson bowling, basically. Big chases. I think it's 4 outside the circle there as well.
It was, yeah.
This game, Phil Hughes almost makes a ton. George Bailey makes that 92 not out from 50 balls. This is probably around the time that you're writing Bailey for the Ashes.
The timing that made my career accidentally happen. Yes, it was all part of the same thing with Bailey.
So Kohli is in that patch where he makes the 2 fastest Indian hundreds in consecutive innings. I think he makes 100 even. So Australia make 359 and India chase it 1 down. Rowe at 141 not, Shikhar Dhawan 95, Kohli 100 even not. Like ridiculous run chase. Could have been still hungover in the evening, but that was in October, so that's probably not the standout innings of the year. And the last 359 is not a chase, so I can't squeeze that into. It's not a target, rather. I can't squeeze it into being a 360 target because it is the chase. That's the Ashton Turner game, which is still one of my favourite ODIs, where Australia lose 2 very cheaply. Finch and Shaun Marsh out early. Khawaja and Hanscom get them to 204. Khawaja gets out. Maxwell comes in and smacks 23 in no time and then gets out. So they still need 130 from 14 overs, which is 130 from 84 balls, which is a stiff ask. And then Hanscom gets out, having made 100. It's a real seesaw chase. Every time seems like they're out of the chase, Ashton Turner hits a 6. They need 88 from 53 when Hanscom gets out. He makes 84 not out from 43 balls, Ashton Turner. Scoops, power shots, all of it. Felt very unlucky not to make that World Cup squad, and then never really threatened again. They picked him in a bunch of white ball games after that. He had 20 other hits for Australia, and it just never clicked in 20 over or 50 over cricket. And I saw him playing at the Oval the other night. Playing for the blue team, wasn't he? The Veruca Salts.
Take your word for it.
And it just, and he struggled. He scratched around, and then he finally got set and nailed one of the cleanest hits you'll ever see for 6, and then got out immediately afterwards. And it felt like a microcosm of the Ashton Turner story. He had that moment where he might have cracked it didn't get the opportunity, and it's never really come around since. And he's 32 years old now, and I wonder what might have been.
Outstanding domestic career, led the Scorchers to multiple white ball,
good
multiple
first-class numbers.
Big Bash trophies. I don't think he was the captain. He might have been the captain of the 50 over team that won three on the trot as well. Although I've got a feeling that was Mitch Marshall.
More recently.
He's been part of that.
Skippered more recently.
Yeah, he's been part of that story of
big part.
Considerable success. Yeah, big part of it. So, yeah, got his chance for Australia. For that window that ran into the 2019 World Cup squad being announced, the working assumption is that he would be the finisher, right? Like they're like, oh, we've seen the evidence in front of us at Mohali. He can do it, therefore he will do it. And it didn't quite work out that way because he didn't make the runs in. Would have been the desert, wasn't it, in the UAE against Pakistan? He didn't quite nail it, and he was out as soon as he was in. And that's just the nature of volatile white ball squads. But yeah, I mean, you're right, Tom. If you really want to talk about Corey Anderson with us, we can do that in the revisits. I think in more likelihood you'll be satisfied by that.
Answered it. We've solved it.
Yeah, I'm just saying. I'm simply saying that if he wants that. Drop us a line and we will do it. But I think that you've done the yards here, Geoff.
Because the USA favourite. That was a lot of fun watching Corey Anderson sort of stroll out like he was playing Sunday Park cricket and whacking 15 off 5.
Geoff, that's us done. That's a pretty good story time, I reckon. 75 minutes of our weekend show. If you want to get involved, we said it before, but we'll say it again. Patreon.com/finalword. The link, is it final word or the final word? I always get
the final word.
I don't know why I kind of stumble on that. I've only said it 1,000 times. The final word. Links in the show notes. Join us on there. Join on Discord. We thank all the commercial partners that work with us, not least Maurice Blackburn, principal partner on the show, New Brew, NordVPN. All those details are in the show notes. And we'll be back next week for another busy week on the program with me, Adam Collins, him, Geoff Lemon. All that's left for me to do is to wish you all a nice weekend. Goodbye.
Bye.
All right.